Hello, team, and welcome to episode 10 of Creative English. Curiosity killed the enrolation. We are live. Welcome, guys. Our first full week after Carnaval. Almost all my students came to class, so I'm happy with that. And this is part 2 of our March classes about the 4 C's of language learning. We talked about feeling comfortable with what you know last week. And today we're going to be talking about what makes you curious. Because nowadays I hear a lot that people can't pay attention. And it's not true. People just pay attention to what makes them curious. And we have more options, we have more information. And if you can take what makes you curious and take what you need, which in this case is English, and pair them together, you'll be improving your English for free with no efforts, wasting no energy. So today, let's see how. And this was an example. I used to love Mortal Kombat, and if I were to start playing, I still remember all of these fatalities till today. And I wish I could take that space in my brain for something more useful, but I have not been able to yet. And our warm-up this week was about microplastics. It's what I have been curious about. Here at home, we meal prep, we make our lunches in advance, and we were using plastic containers. And I read a little bit about it, and apparently I'm going to die, but I checked to see what we can do to improve this. And something that interests you, especially if you have kids. This video is about microplastics and what we should be worried about and what you can do to kind of mitigate the results. And let me see, what have you been curious about recently? I've been curious about microplastics. And what is a good source of information on this topic? Oof, that is a hard one because I think it's a newish topic, so I am getting some mixed information. But I think it's about seeing what makes sense and seeing what information is actionable. You know, eat more fiber, seems smart. Don't heat plastic, makes sense. Avoid plastic water bottles. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I love my seltzer. But we do what we can. And next up, our grammar point, adjectives. When we think about grammar, I think our brain goes right to verbs, conjugations, tenses, present perfect, all that horrible stuff. When we think about vocabulary, we think about nouns, stuff, things. And I don't think adjectives get enough love. So today our focus is going to be on adjectives. And I said 5 rules, but think of them as tips, tricks. Specifically, they are 5 points where I see my students making mistakes. And number 1, comparatives and superlatives. Why? Here in Portuguese, it's a lot easier. We have one word for both, whether it's like, let me see, taller, mais alto. João é mais alto que a Maria. João é o mais alto da turma. We don't really have any differences. So that's our first problem. In English, sometimes we will use the ER, sometimes the ST. Problem number 2, in Portuguese, we only have 4 irregular adjectives. But in English, they're kind of mixed. Sometimes we will use more and most. Sometimes we will add ER and EST, these suffixes. How will you know? The official rule is 2 syllables or less, add ER or EST. 3 syllables or more, we add more for the comparatives and most for the superlatives. Why? The idea is that these are already big words. If we were to say interestinger, it'd be hard to say. Now, English loves its exceptions. So sometimes there will be the smaller adjectives that we'll use more and most. And specifically, if you see an adjective ending with ed or with ing, it's going to be more and most. So I think that's a good tip that I can give you. Next up, oh, and one more thing. Don't use both. It sounds horrible. If you make a mistake and, for example, say more tall instead of taller, normal. We're in March. I've probably looked up a word to see whether it's ER or more 2 or 3 times. It's normal. But if you use both, you're guaranteeing that it's wrong. So it sounds a little bit like you're choosing to make a mistake, and I don't recommend it. It sounds worse. Number 2, gradable and ungradable adjectives. What are these? Gradable adjectives are the more basic ones. They're the first ones we learn. And this can be good because we learn them and they're useful. I can say something is good. I can say something it's pretty good. It's not so good. It's kind of good. It's really good. It's very good. But if I were to use excellent, excellent's already here. It's already very good. You can't be very excellent. It doesn't make sense. So we learn these gradable adjectives, and that's awesome. But I've also noticed that my students use them maybe a little bit too much, because if I know how to say good, why am I going to use excellent, amazing, awesome? I can just add very. And it's not wrong. There's no problem. Very is a very good word. But I think adding a few of these ungradable adjectives, these extreme adjectives, they can enrich your English. And this column on the right, I would say that more than half of these words I have never heard one of my students say, because they'll just use the column on the left. So if you hear yourself using very too much, maybe pick a couple of these to add. Because if you say that she is very beautiful, that's awesome. It's a great compliment. But if you say she is gorgeous, there's a certain gravitas, it sounds stronger, sounds cooler. So that's my recommendation. And if you really want to emphasize one of these ungradable adjectives, I guess you can use like extremely, absolutely, completely, but it is extra. It's just for emphasis and not actually making it any bigger. Number 3, suffixes. And some of these suffixes are normally associated with adjectives, starting with Y. This is part of what is considered the Brazilian English accent. You'll hear things, I likey, doggy. And what you're doing in this case is you're turning the word into an adjective. And let me say, I had one of these. It's a good example. Like doggy, you can say that this is a doggy ball. It's kind of doggy-like. And if I were to say it's a dog ball, it's a ball for dogs. So there's a slight variation. But when you add this Y sound, either correctly, we say funny, pretty, cloudy, windy, ugly, all of these end with Y naturally. Or you can kind of make a fake adjective, a pseudo adjective, not fake, because we all use this, to turn something into an adjective. Number 2, we have ish. And whenever you hear ish, I want you to imagine more or less, so. And this, again, we have some regular adjectives that use it: foolish, childish, selfish. Seems like a lot of bad ones, but I don't know why. But the ish, we're kind of saying more or less. So if I say that he is tall, okay, he's tall. If he's tallish, he's kind of tall. And this is actually your expression of the week. Kinda, sorta. It's a more native way of saying more or less, because I hear my students saying more or less, so a lot. But I would say that natives would go with a kind of, which ends up sounding like kinda, or sort of, sorta. It's a little bit more natural. Okay, so ish, I want you to imagine a hand going like this. So it's kinda tall. He's tallish. And the last 2 we're going to see together, ed and ing. And they come in pairs, actually trios, because there's always a verb form. The ed form is what's being affected: bored, annoyed, interested, confused. And the ing form is the cause. The movie is boring, interesting, confusing. And the person gets bored, confused, interested. So they always come in pairs, and they'll have a verb form as well: to bore, to interest, to confuse. So you learn one of these, you learn a bunch of new words. Excellent for your vocab. Number 4, I put these 3 verbs: looks, feels, seems. They are state verbs. We also have some others. To be is a good example of it. But these are verbs that we associate with adjectives. She looks cool. This feels good. It seems nice. And we can also add a like to turn a description into a comparison. But sometimes I see my students mixing these up. If there is a noun, I want to hear a like. She looks like a cool person. So if you have one adjective, one noun, you need to use the like. But if you only use adjectives, in this case, you can't use like. So remember, no nouns, no like. Noun, we need a like. And it's the difference between taking a description and a comparison. Number 5, last up, this guy right here. I think it's a dangerous word for my Brazilian students. To always carries a negative connotation when used as an adjective. It's like too much. It's past the limit. In Portuguese, we'll use to emphasize. It's too funny. But if we say too funny in English, you're saying it's so funny that it's become a problem. If the person's too nice, people are taking advantage of them. So to, negative connotation. And on the other side of the enough ladder, so not enough, bad, 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 and then enough, good, 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 and then too much, too many, bad, bad, bad again. All right? And what was the last thing you ate today? I am hungry. It's lunchtime, but the last thing I ate was breakfast. I had some delicious boiled eggs with some crunchy toast and a very purple green juice because of the beets. So that is what I had for breakfast today. Extra credit. I want you to think about this. Which sounds funnier? The movie was funny. The movie was pretty funny. I'll let you know at the end. And team, our game this week is just 3 sounds. Yum, give me more of that. Yuck, get away from me. Or meh, I really don't care. And these are the 3 basic human reactions. And we can turn them into some easy English practice. Grab a partner, give them a topic. Tripe. Yuck. Tripe is a Brazilian dish, the little fold that I do not think is edible. But yes, that is a big yuck for me. But on the other hand, rice with piqui is a big yum for me, and a lot of people will give it a yuck. Part 2 of this exercise, ask why. Why? So in this case, tripe is a big yuck because of the texture. It really bothers me. While rice with piqui, I've learned to like because of the nutritional benefits. And it tastes good, but you just need to be careful when you're eating it so you don't get hurt. So it does not need to be about food. You can do it with activities or really anything. And person will go yum, yuck, or meh, and then you just ask why. You've practiced your English in one of the easiest ways possible. Lots of examples. My students gave some good examples. And our talking point, microplastics. From what I talked about with my students, it seems most people have been made aware of this in the recent future. I think there's always something. There was the lead. I remember they used to talk a lot about this in school, like no lead pencils. And then before that, there was asbestos. I guess now we have microplastics. And I'm sure the next generation will have something else. Micro Wi-Fi or something. So some points to discuss, what they are, what they do, where we absorb them. I was really surprised. Apparently receipts, don't touch receipts. Apparently they're a big source of microfibers. Actionable ways to reduce exposure. Don't heat up plastic. Seems like a basic one. And how to expel them. Fiber. I love the gym stuff. Protein's awesome, but I think we don't talk enough about fiber. More fiber, always good. It'll help eliminate the bad stuff. And what was something people used to be afraid of when you were younger, but now not so much? Eggs. I love eating eggs, and probably because when I was younger, I remember my mom would say, if you eat too many eggs, you're going to die of cholesterol. So I remember when I used to eat like more eggs, I used to be, oh, this is awesome. So nowadays that we're told to go nuts and eat as many eggs as possible, it seems like it's almost a prize. So eggs, people used to be terrified of them. And our challenge, YouTube critic. Team, my favorite source of these videos, my favorite social media, I guess. I don't know, it's YouTube social media, but it's my favorite time waster. And I think that algorithm, it can be easily trained to what you like and want. So why not include some English to it? And how can you turn this into some awesome English practice? After you watch something, write a sentence or two about the video. Oh, but I hate writing. All right, talk to somebody about the video. Send them an audio file, a voice message. And they'll be at work, and then all of a sudden, oh, I watched this video about this. I thought of you. And you're getting your English practice, and you're doing a good deed, bringing somebody into the English practice fold. So our vocab, esoteric. Something that is esoteric is understood by a small group of people, something more specialized. Fear-mongering. Fear-mongering is when you are actively trying to spread fear. It is why I have given up news for Lent. I am not reading or watching any news this month. Too much fear-mongering, trying to convince us that everything is an enemy. And tripe. Tripe is food here, a food here in here. It's food here in Brazil, but it can also be used to say something is silly or worthless. I wonder why, because it is horrible and disgusting. So something that is tripe can be something disgusting. And our answer to the question above, it depends. So I think at first glance, we'll see that pretty, it's kind of making it a little bit better. But if you think about it practically, I can't say the movie was pretty funny. It doesn't sound very good. But the movie was pretty funny. It was kind of funny. It does work. So where do you stand? I think it depends on your expectation. If you have a low expectation, say it was pretty funny, it's positive. It's a step up. But if I was expecting a hilarious movie, it's pretty funny. So it's kind of a step down. But it's an open question. I don't have a 100% answer to give you. I'm sorry. But team, thank you either way for joining me. And like always, I hope to see you in class. Have a good one.